and welcome back to Friday Reads, where we help you find your next read. I'm Jill.
And I'm Julie, and we're filming in a different part of the library today. We are at our sister library display. So I don't know if everybody knows, but we have a sister library called Chughtai Public Library, and they are located in Pakistan. So Jill and I are sitting there. We've got their newsletter, some Pakistani authors, some recipes from them. And today, Jill and I are going to share the top books in English that are most checked out from that library. So Jill, kick us off.
Some of these are going to be familiar to you and some of these are not. This one is not, but this author is quite popular. The Devil and Miss Prim, which is the third book in the series of On the Seventh Day by Paulo Coelho. This guy. A stranger arrives at a remote village in Viscos, carrying with him a backpack containing a notebook and 11 gold bars. He comes searching for the answer to a question that torments him. Are human beings in essence good or evil? In welcoming the mysterious foreigner, the whole village becomes an accomplice to a sophisticated plot, which will forever mark their lives. A novel of temptation by internationally best-selling author Paulo Coelho, The Devil and Miss Prim is a thought-provoking parable of a community devoured by greed, cowardice, and fear as it struggles with a choice between good and evil. Paulo Coelho is a Brazilian author who was born in 1947 in Rio de Janeiro. Before dedicating his life completely to literature, he worked as a theater director and actor, lyricist, and journalist. In 1986, Paulo Coelho did the pilgrimage to St. James in Compostela, an experience to be documented in his book, The Pilgrimage. In the following year, he published The Alchemist. Slow initial sales convinced his first publisher to drop the novel, but it went on to become one of the best-selling Brazilian books of all time. So this guy has done his work. This was published in 2000.
And they had some big classics on this list.
They sure did.
So my first pick is one of their classics that they had, and that is War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, and this was published back in 1867. In Russia's struggle with Napoleon, Tolstoy saw a tragedy that involved all of mankind. War and Peace broadly focuses on Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812 and follows three of the most well-known characters in literature. Pierre Bezdakov, the illegitimate son of a count who is fighting for his inheritance and yearning for spiritual fulfillment. Prince Andrei Bolkonsky, who leaves his family behind to fight in the world against Napoleon, and Natasha Rostov, the beautiful young daughter of a nobleman who intrigues both men. As Napoleon's army invades, Tolstoy brilliantly follows characters from diverse backgrounds, peasants and nobility, civilians and soldiers, as they struggle with the problems unique to their era, their history, and their culture. And as the novel progresses, these characters transcend and become some of the most moving and human figures in world literature. You can find this book in our classics collection, and this was number 13 of their top 15 checkouts in English. So War and Peace, an ambitious read.
They are ambitious, I'll tell you. That's a big one to be read in English, and I don't know if English is their first language. This is the next one on my list, 1984 by George Orwell, also in our classics department. A masterpiece of rebellion and imprisonment where war is peace, freedom is slavery, and Big Brother is watching. Thought please, Big Brother Orwellian. These words have entered our vocabulary because of George Orwell's classic dystopian novel, 1984. A story of one man's nightmare odyssey as he pursues forbidden love affair through a world ruled by warring states and a power structure that controls not only information, but also individual thought and memory. 1984 is a prophetic, haunting tale, more relevant than ever before. 1984 exposes the worst crimes, the destruction of truth, freedom, and individuality. The story takes place in a fictional future. The current year is uncertain, but believed to be 1984. Remember, this was published in 1949. So it was the future. Much of the world is in perpetual war. Great Britain, known as Airstrip 1, has become a province of totalitarian superstate Oceania, which led by Big Brother, a dictatorial leader supported by an intense cult of personality manufactured by the thought police. The party engages in omnipresent government surveillance and through the Ministry of Truth, historical negationism, and constant propaganda to persecute individually and independent thinking. Orwell described this book as a satire and a display of the perversions to which centralized economy is liable, while also stating he believes something resembling it could arrive. The novel examines the role of truth and facts within societies in ways in which we can be manipulated. Parallels have been drawn through the novel and real-life totalitarianism, mass surveillance, and violations of freedom of expression, among other themes. So, interesting choice from Pakistan.
Yeah, I have not read that book. My second pick is Rumi's Daughter by Muriel Malfoy, published in 2004. Rumi is now acknowledged as one of the great mystical poets of the Western world, with huge sales of the many collections of his poetry. Not much is known about his life except that he lived in 13th century Anatolia, which is now Turkey, had a great spiritual friendship with a wild man named Shams, brought an adopted daughter into his family, and was distraught when Shams finally disappeared. In this story, Rumi's Daughter, it's a delightful novel about Kimya, the girl who was sent from her rural village to live in Rumi's home. She already had mystical tendencies and learned a great deal under Rumi's tutelage. Eventually, she married Shams, an unusual husband, almost totally absorbed by his longings for God. Their marriage was fiery and different, and in the end dissolved by Kimya's death, after which Shams vanished. Rumi's Daughter tells Kimya's story with great charm and tenderness. It's well written and thought-provoking. It's also something to add something new and fresh to what is so far known about Rumi. And this book was number 3 on their top 15 checkouts list. So Rumi's Daughter, published back in 2004.
Cool. My next one is a Turkish author. This is The 40 Rules of Love by Elif Shafak, who's an award-winning British-Turkish novelist and most widely read female author of Turkey. She writes in both Turkish and English and has published 17 books, 11 of which are novels. So this is one of them. This was published in 2009. Ella Rubinstein is 40 years old and unhappily married when she takes a job as a reader for a literary agent. Her first assignment is to read and report on Sweet Blasphemy, a novel written by a man named Aziz Sahara. Ella is memorized by his tale of Shams' research for Rumi and the dervish role in transforming the successful but unhappy cleric into a committed mystic. A passionate poet, advocate of love, she's also taken with Shams lessons or rules that offer insight into an ancient philosophy based on all unity of people and religions, and the presence of love in each and every one of us. As she reads on, she realizes that Rumi's story mirrors her own, and that Zahara, like Shams, has come to set her free. This is a lyrical, exuberant follow-up to her 2007 novel, The Bastard of Istanbul. Acclaimed Turkish author Elif Shafak unfolds 2 tantalizing parallel narratives, one contemporary and the other set in 13th century, when Rumi encountered his spiritual mentor, the whirlish dervish known as Shams of Tabriz, that together incarnate the poet's timeless message of love. So this one seems a little different to me.
Yeah, and a good female author.
Female author.
My third pick is another classic in our collection, and this is The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway, and this was published in 1952. It was written between December 1950 and February 1951. So a pretty quick turnaround. It was the last major fictional work Hemingway published during his lifetime, and it tells the story of Santiago, an aging fisherman, and his long struggle to catch a giant marlin. Hemingway began writing The Old Man and the Sea in Cuba during a tumultuous period in his life. His previous novel, Across the River and Into the Trees, had met with negative reviews, and amid a breakdown in relations with his wife Mary, he had fallen in love with a new muse, Adriana. Having completed one book in a planned Sea trilogy, Hemingway began to write as an addendum a story about an old man and a marlin that had originally been told to him 15 years earlier. He wrote up to 1,000 words a day, completing this manuscript in 6 weeks. Over the following year, Hemingway became increasingly convinced that the manuscript would stand on its own as a novella. Life magazine published the full novella in September 1952. Hemingway's publisher released their first edition a week later on the 8th. Thanks to favorable early reviews and word of mouth, popular anticipation was so high that both releases were heavily bootlegged. The magazine sold a record 5.3 million copies in 2 days, while Scribner's sold tens of thousands of copies. It's been translated into 9 languages by the end of 1952, and it remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 6 months. In 1953, it received the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, and it was the only work explicitly mentioned when Hemingway was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1954. Early reviews were positive, with many hailing what they saw as a return to form for Hemingway after Across the River's negative reception. The acclaim lessened over time as literary critics began to think the initial reception overblown and overenthusiastic. Whether The Old Man and the Sea is inferior or equal to Hemingway's other works has since been the debate over many scholars. Thematic analysis has focused on Christian imagery and symbolism, on the similarity of the novella's themes to its predecessors in the Hemingway canon, and on the character of the fisherman Santiago himself. This was the number 15 out of 15 on their list of top 15. The Old Man and the Sea.
Hemingway made it over to favorite in Pakistan. This is another classic and another female author.
There you go.
Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Pride and Prejudice has charmed generations of readers for more than 2 centuries. The much-adapted novel is famed for its witty, spirited heroines, sensational romances, and deft remarks on the triumphs and pitfalls of social convention. This was first published in 1813. It is the second published novel by English author Jane Austen, written when she was 20 to 21 and later published in 1813. It's a novel of manners. It follows the character development of Elizabeth Bennet, a protagonist of the book, who learns about the repercussions of hasty judgments and comes to appreciate the difference between superficial goodness and actual goodness. Her father, Mr. Bennet, owner of the Longbourn estate in Hertfordshire, has 5 daughters, but this estate is entailed by a strict settlement that Mr. Bennet entered into when coming of age, so now can only be inherited by a male heir. His wife brought a settlement of 5 pounds into the marriage and has since inherited an additional 4,000 pounds on the death of her father. But Mrs. Bennet and family face only living on the interest from these sums upon Mr. Bennet's death. To his regret, he has failed to save out of the income of the estate to provide the enhanced marriage proportions for his daughters. Thus, it is imperative that at least one of his daughters marry well to support the others, which is a primary motivation driving the plot. So, Pride and Prejudice.
I have to say, I never read that either.
I haven't either. I need to.
Like I should tackle some more of our classics. My next pick is The Hit List by Holly Sadon. She's a blogger and podcaster with Julian McAllister, actually. And this was on their list as the 11th most checked out book. This was published back in 2020. You don't know who, you don't know why, but someone wants you dead. When Marianne's husband Greg is knocked off his bike and killed on the way to work, she must unpick the life he left behind. Numb with grief, she consoles herself by scouring Greg's laptop, finding comfort in reading his old emails and tracing his footsteps across the web. Until one day she discovers that he had been accessing the dark web. Why was Greg, a principled charity worker and dedicated husband, logging onto a website that showcases the worst of humanity's cruel impulses and where anything is available for a price? Marianne steels herself and continues logging on. After tentative searching, she discovers her name on a hit list. In this fast-paced, powerful, and exceptionally plotted novel, Marianne must figure out whether Greg was trying to protect her or whether he was complicit in the conspiracy for her murder. As she is pulled deeper into the depths of the underworld that Greg was seemingly hostage to, she gets closer and closer to coming face to face with Sam, the assassin hired to kill her. The dark truths that Marianne uncovers speak volumes about the dark underbelly of our society and forces us to question how far we would go to protect those we care most about. So The Hit List, this sounds like a good read, actually.
Yeah, it does. I'm like, really, I like the choices that Pakistan.
That was their 11th most checked out book on their list.
That wouldn't surprise me a little bit.
Yeah,
I'd have made it all the way over there. It's cool. This is another classic, Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. And I think I'm pretty sure I heard my boss saying that if you're going to read Charles Dickens, read this one.
Mm-hmm. She did.
Great Expectations charts the progress of Pip from childhood through the often painful experiences to adulthood, as he moves from Kent marshes to busy commercial London, encountering a variety of extraordinary characters ranging from Magwitch, the escaped convict, to Miss Havisham, locked up in her unhappy past and living with her ward, the arrogant, beautiful Estella. Pip must discover his true self and set his own values and priorities. Whether such values allow one to prosper in the complex world of early Victorian England is the major question posed by Great Expectations, one of Dickens' most fascinating and disturbing novels. The novel is set in Kent and London in the early mid-19th century and contains some of Dickens' most celebrated scenes, starting in a graveyard where the young Pip is accosted by escaped convict Abel Magwitch. Great Expectations is full of extreme imagery, poverty, prison ships, chains, and fights to the death, and features a colorful cast of characters who have entered popular culture. These include the eccentric Miss Havisham, the beautiful Bacolda Stella, and Joe Gargery, an unsophisticated and kind blacksmith. Dickens' themes include wealth and poverty, love and rejection, and eventual triumph of good over evil. This was published in 1861, so they made their list.
My last pick is the author Jill started with, and this was the #1 book on their list. He actually had 4 on their list of 15. So this is The Alchemist. Paulo Coelho was published in 1988. Combining magic, mysticism, wisdom, and wonder into an inspiring tale of self-discovery, The Alchemist has become a modern classic, selling millions of copies around the world and transforming the lives of countless readers across generations. The author's masterpiece tells the mystical story of Santiago, an Andalusian shepherd boy who yearns to travel in search of worldly treasure. His quest will lead him to riches far different and far more satisfying than he could ever imagine. Santiago's journey teaches us about the essential wisdom of listening to our hearts, recognizing opportunity, and learning to read the omens strewn along life's path, and most importantly, following our dream. The back of the book says, to realize one's destiny is a person's only obligation. So I listened to this a couple months ago and I liked it. So
I think it's his best book.
yeah, The Alchemist, their #1 pick. Like I said, Paulo Coelho had 4 on that out of the 15 books. So
I know. #1 pick in English books in Pakistan. So I hope that you enjoyed this little tour of what they're checking out and reading in Pakistan. And you can read any of these books. You can get them through the InfoSoup system. Or if you're in the library, you can check out some of these Pakistani authors here at our display.
yeah, and come check out some of the recipes and the newsletter that the Chughtai Public Library has shared with us. So Jill and I thank you for watching. You can find our videos on the Kimberly Public Library Facebook page, YouTube channel. You know where to find us, the Kimberly Public Library website. So until next time, thanks for watching.
Bye!